If he wants to hold his ground on this show, and deal not just with us but with listeners and with the community, he's certainly invited. Once that report is public, and we've held running that show here on KZYX because we wanted to give Tom Mitchell, in all fairness, the opportunity to respond to John Dickerson's report. But it hasn't happened yet. Not forthcoming. We'll hold off airing the show here on KZYX.
Along those lines, the other show that we've held off airing is the retirement board meeting from last month, where we interviewed Tim Knutson and Jim Anderson, and they requested that we not air the segment with Peter Chan. And so we actually haven't posted that yet. So I'm curious what the listeners think about a request from county officials to not air television segments that we've produced that were public record.
And in public meetings.
Our next guest is Andrew Kramer. He's a economic correspondent for the New York Times Russian Bureau. He's been stationed there for 3 years now. 3 years now. And before that, you were with AP, writing Russian slanted stories. And he actually grew up here in Ukiah. Went to school here and graduated from Ukiah High. Right. And then went on to Santa Cruz for your degree in journalism, or is it
history?
And went on to be a journalist, and now he's doing great. He's one of 3 reporters in the Russian Bureau.
That's right.
That's for the entire country, folks. And so today we're going to talk about the kind of effect of the U.S. financial markets and the corresponding effect in the Russian markets, in emerging bond funds, emerging markets, how the ties run deep. And Andrew has lots of information about the inside track, and you can read all his articles at NewYorkTimes.com. There's hundreds of articles he's written. He's done some great front page pieces on oil, Georgia, financial markets. He's a great reporter, and we're really lucky to have him here all the way from Russia today with us. Andrew,
Thank you,
welcome.
Jay. Thank you. Well, I had a interesting story that may not be directly related to what John was talking about, the fundamentals, but it seems that investors always like the phrase that the fundamentals are strong, and no matter what's happening, they'll always come out with this claim that the fundamentals of their market are strong and doing well. And I had the opportunity to interview the Prime Minister of Georgia back in August, who's a former investment banker, and his country had just been invaded and partially occupied by a foreign country, and he was convincing me that the fundamentals were strong, in fact, in Georgia. So there'll always be somebody who'll tell you that the fundamentals are strong. I think the interesting thing that I cover about Russia is it's one piece of a bigger story, which is the emerging markets. And while the U.S. growth is maybe flat at best, I'm not sure we're technically in a recession. I know Germany is now technically in a recession with 2 quarters of negative growth. The emerging markets have been growing for the past several years, and it's not clear exactly where this is going, but they may actually continue to grow even as the United States and developed economies remain flat or go into a minor recession. So it's one part of the larger story of the global economy, which I'd be happy to talk about.
Tell me one thing. We've mentioned, I mentioned just right now in my spiel, that much of the world has lost faith and confidence in Wall Street. Is that Russia's perception of us as well?
Absolutely. They like to blame the United States for the crisis in the rest of the world, and there's probably some truth to that. It's also a position that other European countries, France and Germany, have taken. But they also benefited greatly from Wall Street when lending was easy, and they were happy to take Western Wall Street money to enrich themselves back in the boom times, back when credit was quite easy to come by.
Why don't you run a short history of that by our listening audience? So, in other words, say during the 1990s when credit was easy. Who in Russia borrowed money? Who did they borrow money from? What were those terms? And how did it all turn bad?
Well, it was more in the 2000, after the 1998 financial crisis in Russia. And a lot of these were the wealthy tycoons in Russia would go to Wall Street banks and borrow money.
So the cowboys, these gangster billionaires, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right. And they got in the same trap that homeowners here and everywhere got into. They borrowed on easy terms, thinking that it would go on forever. So on the one hand, they blame the United States for their economic troubles, and this is something that a lot of people around the world do, but they also took advantage of it when that money was available, just like any homeowner who bought a house that was too expensive for them to afford, took advantage of it at that time.
One thing that we talked about this morning, Andrew, along those lines was that the Russian people, that moving out of communism, one of the things that they did, that the government did, was basically grant the deeds to property to the people that were in those properties. And a lot of apartments in Russia, I understand, a lot of high-rise apartments, kind of smaller government housing, I guess is the best way to put it. So a lot of people never actually traded in the Russian stock market or any other markets. It was more controlled by the government. So what's going on now? Is that opening up, or is it still the Russian, is the government in control of monies that move in and out of Russia?
It's still largely under government control in the sense that there are only a few very wealthy people who invest in the stock market in Russia, and these people are sometimes beholden to the government. It's not the same as in the United States with the diffuse, large population of stockholders where you have many ordinary people investing in the stock market. So in this sense, they really got off quite a bit easier than Americans during the financial crisis, at least the ordinary Russians. There is, of course, a problem with the currency weakening. Some of these issues might seem a little bit esoteric, but I was curious whether, for example, the pension fund might have invested in global emerging market assets, and in this sense, the world is quite interconnected, and some of the issues that affect Russia would affect anybody who's in the investing community and had put their money into an emerging market stock. I don't know if this is the case here, if the